Thanks so much, Sam and Parker, for having me on your podcast. It's honestly going to, be really fun. So I'm excited.
Hell yeah. I'm loving it. I'm excited. How long have you been in Mexico City, Dexter?
For the past few months, my wife and I are learning Spanish, and we're trying to do more immersion here. So we're taking lessons every day and trying to speak as much as possible here.
So you're with your wife in Mexico City. Wow. So you obviously are running a business, but also exploring the culture. Where were you before Mexico City?
Before Mexico City, I was in Singapore for about 3 years. So I was working full time in Singapore. And before that, I was in San Francisco for 6 years. And before that, college in New Hampshire on the East Coast, and then grew up in Michigan. So originally from Michigan.
So a worldly view on the world. I will love it. That sounds incredible. I actually was in Singapore with my wife for our honeymoon earlier this
no
summer.
way.
Fantastic place. We spent a couple days there after we were in Bali, which was just an incredible experience.
You got amazing photos at the top
my
of
God,
Marina Bay
yeah.
Sands.
Totally. Sam was very jealous. But Elevation Nation's probably really jealous of you, Dexter, coming from Mexico City, and they're probably really curious to learn a little bit more about you. So we start every episode of Elevation Nation the exact same way. We would love for you to give us your elevator pitch so we can learn a little bit more about who you are.
Absolutely. So I'm Dexter, as Sam and Parker introduced me. I'm the founder of Money Abroad. It's an online education platform which helps high performers design their own money path. And for the past 10 years, I've also been working in tech as a product leader. I'm a fractional product leader now, working with founders of scaling startups, getting their product teams back on track, mainly in fintech. And, what really excited me about Elevation Nation and coming on was, the being able to talk about personal finance and how it impacted me on my journey, from building my career in Silicon Valley to living abroad, overseas, to now building a portfolio career. So I think it's particularly relevant for people in their 20s, just getting started. Excited to talk about those kind of topics with you guys.
I'm so hyped to hop in this. I think Parker and I are both extremely passionate about personal finance, financial literacy. It's just something that I think isn't taught enough until you are too old and missed out on about a decade's worth of compounding investing that you could have done. And so I'm very grateful that my family had me get a credit card at a young age so I could start to build my credit score up, taught me a little bit more about financial independence and literacy, and put some damn good books in my hand to empower and educate myself. I know Parker probably has his favorite on that bookshelf. I'm surprised he hasn't run back and grabbed it before. But Ramit Sethi, I believe, Parker, totally changed your outlook on finance. And I've read a few by some bigger pockets guys that really kind of flipped my mind a bit. And so, Dexter, I'm just really excited to get into it. Obviously, we have, I'm going to say similar paths, but let's be honest. I went to, I don't know if you can see, University of Maryland with Parker, which is not an Ivy League school. You went to a slightly better school, and that's okay. I'm just giving you the credit where credit is due. And we all ended up on similar-ish, again, emphasis on the ish paths in the corporate world, right? Dexter, you were in tech on product. Parker and I are in Big Four consulting. And that, to many people, is having made it, right? You got the high-paying job.
Definitely.
You climbed the corporate ladder, save your money, put money in the 401k. They match 6%, and you'll retire by 65, and then you did it. But I think all three of us share this commonality of there's a different path. So, Dexter, I'd love to learn a little bit more about you, obviously starting in tech, and then when your mind opened up to the other opportunities there are to have financial freedom for yourself.
That's such a wonderful point, Sam, because growing up, that wasn't something I really thought a whole lot about. So when I was growing up in Michigan, my family was a hardworking immigrant family. My dad, came to North America from China with $300 in his pocket in 1989. Later, my mom joined him. She opened up a restaurant in Michigan. My dad was an IT professional. So we were, typical kind of hardworking immigrant household. And growing up, I saw my parents struggle with financial insecurity, and that really impacted me. So that experience lit this fire in my belly to pursue what I thought was the definition of success at the time, which is exactly what you said, getting a high-paying tech job in Silicon Valley. That was my version of the Silicon Valley dream, and I felt like I had achieved that a few years, into my career, working as a product manager at companies like Dropbox, triple my income in the first 5 years of my career. But despite that outward success, I felt empty, I felt burned out, and I think the turning point for me was after the Dropbox IPO. I had, reflected a bit and felt like, okay, while I was being recruited by these top companies and what I thought was my dream jobs at the time, I realized I was actually chasing someone else's dream and not my own dream. And that's when I did a lot of inner work. So I reflected a lot on my values and what I actually wanted to get out of my life. So a mini kind of existential crisis, if you will. But that helped me pinpoint that my top values were things like freedom, curiosity, and venture. And then I quit my job. I traveled to 20 countries. I moved to Singapore, worked at a company that eventually became a fintech unicorn, and then built this portfolio career, which I'm doing now, where I'm doing part-time consulting, which has helped me 2 to 5x my hourly rate versus the work that I was doing before. At the same time, I can build Money Abroad, my online education business, and I can learn Spanish in Latin America. So those are the kind of things that I've decided are important to me that I want to pursue. And it's a new version of a dream versus the Silicon Valley dream that I had prior.
You didn't mention a taco tour on there.
Incredible.
I hope you're fitting that in.
Many taco tours. Yeah, I got many recommendations.
I love it. It's just so cool, Dexter, sitting here listening to you as someone who kind of wants to get to where you're at, to find that freedom in a sense. Sam and I love our jobs in Big Four consulting. We love what we're doing with Elevation Nation. But Sam and I envision a world where, of course, we want to be doing more podcasts. We want to be meeting more people. We want to be speaking around the world more. We want to be able to bring our community of elevators together. And to hear you as someone who's actually done that, not creating a community called Elevation Nation, doing your own business and your own venture is really inspiring. And something that really resonated with me is how you said that you needed to take a step back and figure out your values. And self-awareness is such a critical thing for a young adult to figure out. And it's a core pillar of what Sam and I love to talk about at Elevation Nation for how young people can visualize who they are in the world and what they're going to go and get and then go make it happen. So I'm really curious, could you walk us through the process that you went through to kind of come to find those core values for yourself?
Definitely. That's I just want to caveat that this is a simple or super quick process. This was a process that took me through a bunch of different life experiences, from feeling stressed and burned out at my job and feeling like I was a bit more lost, to then trigger and get me to finally do a couple of different things. So one was I found a career coach at that point in time to help me navigate, some of the challenges that I was facing, and to help me also reflect and see more clearly what my own inner thoughts were and attitudes were towards the challenges I was facing. So you guys talk about mental fortitude, and I think one of the important elements of mental fortitude from my perspective is being able to identify your own inner critic, and then understanding like the messages, your inner saboteur is telling you, and understanding why they're telling you that kind of thing. So that's what working with a coach helped me do. And I think part of those exercises also revealed a bit more about like, what do I care about, and the fundamental tensions between like different identities that I held for myself. So I obviously had this more achievement-oriented identity, right? There was like achievement Dexter, and then there was the more like adventure or like curious Dexter, and then those were two versions of my inner thoughts that were constantly, struggling with each other. So you can imagine like, two different voices speaking on your shoulders, right? It was kind of like that. So working with a coach helped. The other thing that really helped was doing a values exercise. So the values exercise that I discovered was shared to me from a friend who worked at Google, and he got this from his manager at Google. And the values exercise basically looked like you have a spreadsheet with a list of about, 50 different values and definitions of those values. And you have to go through and first sort, which of the, maybe let's say like top 20 values you care about the most. So I think you do like I think it's a high, medium, low. So you do first like a high, medium, low, what's aligned with you. And then you have to then narrow it down. Like in a second round, you have to cut it down to 10. And then in a third round, you have to cut it down to 5.
Which is not
No,
easy.
it's really hard because you look at the list and it's like, oh yeah, I'm like all of these, or I'm like, a lot of these. And the challenging thing was to distill it down to, okay, what's the difference between like your top 5 versus your top 20? And that really helped me narrow it down. So I narrowed down to freedom, curiosity, adventure, relationships, and courage. Those were my top 5 at the time. This was an exercise I did about 6 years ago, and when I think about my values, I think they're mostly the same. Like I've grown as a person, and I've matured, and I've definitely evolved in my thinking and how I view the world, but I think my fundamental values have stayed the same. So that's why I think this exercise was really powerful for me, because it's been like a constant kind of compass, if you will, to tell me like what direction I should be going in. I can use it to then look at my career situation and say, okay, in my career, am I doing things that are fundamentally aligned like with these top 5 values? And if not, like which ones is it not aligned with? Maybe it's like sacrificing my sense of adventure, let's say. Okay, so how do I get that in there? Is that something that I can do in my current team or the projects that I'm working on? Maybe it just requires a small adjustment, or maybe it's something that requires a bigger change.
Yeah.
But at least with the values, I can ask those questions, and that really helped me make decisions at that point in time.
So important. And I think for young adults out there, it's something many of us struggle with, is we can go look at a business or a financial statement and analyze the shit out of it, but we can't look in the mirror and analyze ourselves. And I think that's why Parker and I are so passionate about what we're doing at Elevation Nation, because this skill set, this concept of introspection, of mental fortitude, we think is the most important thing that is not taught in schools. And so, Dexter, I love that you dove really deep into the actual exercises that you used to uncover some layers of yourself. And I think for folks out there listening, it's important to take a step back and try to dive into you. So thank you for sharing that with us. I want to get a little bit more into the financial freedom part of this life, because as Parker and I are climbing up that corporate ladder and loving what we do, but certainly burning the candle on both ends, having a company on the side and corporate jobs, and now Parker's married and figuring out married life, there's a lot to balance. And so I want to ask you about that moment of, I don't want to say financial eye-opening, but was there a moment when you said, there's got to be a different way to do this, right? The American dream was instilled and probably taught into you with your parents' incredible stories of entrepreneurship coming over here. How did you break that cycle and come up with your own definition of success and your, not just American dream, but Dexter dream?
That's a great question, Sam. Especially now there's so much talk about FIRE, which is financial independence, retire early. And of course, your parents will talk about work until you're 65 and, keep investing. And then, of course, you'll have like the retirement pension or the pension by that point. But there's also other alternatives. Like there's, even before you get to full financial independence and retiring early at 45, like let's say some people have that goal. I used to have that goal, but I realized even before that, there's other degrees of like semi-financial independence. So, for example, one of the things that I realized for myself is I actually enjoy working. So my version of financial independence isn't necessarily to like retire early and then live on an island and, sip coconuts and just like hang out there the whole time and never work again. That's not my ideal version of financial independence. It's probably like you guys. It's like to work on interesting businesses that I find myself curious about, that I want to keep building. And I know that they're going to make me some money. They might not, make me as much money, knock on wood, maybe they will, as much as working in like a big tech kind of job. But there's other degrees of semi-retirement that can come before that full early retirement. So an example of this is called Coast Fire. And this is a point where you take all of your savings so far in your career and you put them away into your retirement accounts, and you make a couple of assumptions. So you assume, okay, that retirement account is going to grow by, let's say, 5% year on year, 6% year on year in terms of real interest rates. So you're making some assumption that it's going to grow based on the markets, if you're investing in things like stocks. And then you can take a look to see, is that going to be enough in, let's say, 30 years' time? Is that going to achieve, a certain amount of your like freedom number, let's say, in 30 years' time? And if so, then that means that you've achieved some degree of semi-retirement. And as long as you don't touch that principal of that retirement account and continue to let it grow, then you can at least like take your foot off the gas pedal a little bit. It doesn't mean like you can't, you don't have to work ever again. You still have to work, but it does give you a bit more freedom and flexibility to decide what you want to work on or how you want to work. And that's the situation that I'm in. So I can see, okay, my funds for the retirement account are going to be okay, assuming I never touch it again in like 30 years or whatnot. But I still have to work. However, my work just needs to do things like cover my expenses, save, and invest some of it, but it doesn't need to be as much as I was doing, let's say, like 5 years ago or 10 years ago.
So it's basically you're doing things that align with who Dexter is, and you're able to wake up every day very fulfilled in how you spend your time, and you're okay with the possibility that it could make you less money in the maybe the grander scheme of things, but you're using your time more effectively for what you want out of life. And actually, you still know you're going to end up where you would have ended up if you stayed in that corporate job, is financially secure in 30 years, hypothetically speaking. It's a time thing.
It's a time thing. It's you nailed it. You nailed it. It's all about time and getting more control over my time and getting more flexibility around what I do during my day, how I plan out my days. And that to me was the most important thing that I wanted out of this next version of my dream. Previously it was Silicon Valley dream, make the get the high paying job, make the income, level up in terms of my career on the Silicon Valley kind of tech ladder. Right now, my priority is time, so I'm trying to just optimize for that.
Do you find that a lot of people from Silicon Valley are searching for what you've found?
That's a good question. I think part of the people that I know in Silicon Valley are, they are doing either similar things to me, or they're starting to at least be open to different kind of working models, or starting a business, or just thinking more about time and flexibility. And that's because, I'm 33, so I think my kind of social circles in San Francisco are kind of around my age and are thinking about having a kid or thinking about starting a family. And so they're kind of seeing their life change, and because of that, they have different priorities. I would say there's still a lot of people that I know from Silicon Valley who are not interested in anything that I'm doing, and that's okay too.
I am so just glad that I met you. I know Parker said like we were really interested in what you're doing. I feel like, Dexter, I'm volunteering you as a mentor of mine now, whether you like it or not. I apologize, but I think your mentality when it comes to financial literacy, where you're at, the goals that you have, is something that I want to strive towards. And I think we all have different relationships with money. Money is extremely complex. I finished this year The Psychology of Money, which is a fantastic book that dives a little bit deeper into money as a whole, right? And Dexter, you mentioned, wanting to get to certain numbers and financial freedom because of your parents and them having some financial insecurities and what they went through. And I think all of us have. I know me and Parker have very similar stories with that. And so finding that balance between holding on to as much as you can, saving, investing, living life, enjoying life, the ebbs and flows of more expensive months for less, right? Like, I lived in New York City on my entry-level salary, paying more than I ever thought was possible for a shitty apartment, and struggled with that greatly. And now my mentality over time has changed a little bit, and we've worked on it. But I think money as a whole is so interesting and so complex. It's so much more than a financial advisor saying, invest in this stock, or save X amount % of your paycheck, or this 401k is better than that. Money is at the root of how we think with society. It's tied to our success. It's tied to our happiness. It's tied to our freedom and our time. And so I'm just really excited that you have such an interesting perspective on a relationship with money. And I cannot wait to continue to learn from you and with you on this journey that we're all on together. So I'm excited.
I want to ask you one more question, Dexter. I know, Sam, we're going to move to the next section here, but I'm just so fascinated by the idea that you were in a very good situation work-wise. And yourself, when you were younger, probably like, whoa, I'm pumped that Dexter got to this point, making this money, have this job, working these companies. And I can imagine, I haven't done it yet, the internal conflict and the internal conversations that you've had to go through to say, you know what, I'm going to put that aside because I think there's a better world out there for me, but it's going to come at a cost. And coming to accept that cost can probably be the reason why most people don't go that way. And so I'm curious, as you think about that and reflect, how does that make you feel?
Absolutely. I think both of you raise such great points. When I was trying to decide whether or not I was going to leave my job, this was back in 2018, and either, should I go and work for a new job. I had a couple offers at the time that I was really, that I would have been excited about a couple years ago. Or should I finally pull this trigger on this travel the world kind of vision that I had since high school? Really, I had that dream since high school, but I didn't pull that trigger because of financial insecurity. As we talked about growing up in my family, and then also feeling like I didn't have my own kind of finances sorted out until my mid-20s. And also just lack of confidence. I think I didn't have the confidence at that stage. But in 2018, I think what really helped me was seeing, okay, I can kind of experiment. So in my head, I kind of had this like all or nothing kind of mindset at first. I was like, oh, I am either going to double down on career and like work until I'm, a founder of, a venture-backed startup, or, become like a CPO of, the next hot pre-IPO company or whatnot in Silicon Valley, like, or I'm going to do nothing. Like in my head, I kind of had that all or nothing mentality. And what helped me when talking to my career coach in our sessions was kind of like playing out. I have my achievement-driven Dexter, and I have the, more curious, like adventurous Dexter, and like having them like kind of role-playing a little bit and just pretending like, okay, what would the achievement-oriented Dexter say, and then what would the adventure-driven Dexter say, and like just kind of like have them go back and forth at each other until you eventually get to a resting point, right? Like the conversation ends, and you kind of know what's most important to you at that point. You can logic a lot of things. You can rationalize like, oh, I care a lot about career, so I really want to achieve these certain things before I decide to leave and take a travel sabbatical. That was what I was personally thinking about at that time. It's like, oh, I haven't gotten to the stage of my career where I deserve to do this, or I should do this. But emotionally, I realized, oh, I actually resonate more with like these certain values, and it was through doing some of that role playing.
Countless hypotheticals, Dexter, that you probably had to run through, right? And I think a quote I just wanted to say that came to mind is from Shrek, which is ogres have layers. That's the one that came to mind here, and let me explain why. Because Dexter, I see a lot of my same mindset in you, which is, and I'm curious if this holds true, looking back on my college experience, I wish I could do college 20 times because there are so many different paths and degrees and things that I found interesting that I would have loved to have explored and figured out, well, what does that Sam Panich who focused on business law look like? And what is the Sam Panich that focused on psychology and how that works, right? And I think for many elevators, we all share this commonality, which is we're not very content being put in a box. We're not okay just being called one thing because life is beautiful and broad and full of so many opportunities. We want to have our physical athletic side, our mental spiritual side, our health and food and what we eat side, our business side, right? Like we have so many complexities, and I think that's what unites many elevators is this desire to truly get the most out of life and peel back all the layers of life itself to find kind of what makes them the most happy. And so I see a lot of that in you, and I think that's just such a commonality across all our elevators that I absolutely love, and why I'm so proud that you did the work to figure out what you wanted to prioritize. And that's just Dexter right now at 33. Dexter at 36, 37 might have totally different values that he's prioritizing, and it might be a different layer of the onion that we're headed in that direction. And I'm just excited to kind of follow you on that journey, and it's truly an inspiration for me. So I don't know why Shrek came to mind. That was the quote that popped in my head, but I'm going to stick to it, and we're going to go from there.
I was like, maybe it's a green shirt.
I love that
Dexter's
quote.
wearing.
Maybe it's a green shirt.
Yeah, who knows?
I love
I
it.
hope I'm not looking like Shrek right now.
You're not looking like Shrek, but you're sounding like an ogre with layers, and I think there's nothing wrong with that. Dexter, I want to move us into our next segment, our rapid fire segment. It's not about Pixar movies, but it is our favorite segment that we do. Real quick hitting questions. We got a couple of them for you. Quick answer, first thing that pops into your mind. Are you ready?
All right. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Cool. Okay, Parker and I have traveled the world as well. We love going to different countries, as do you. You're a money guy, though. There are a lot more beautiful currencies out there in the world than the U.S. dollar. Can you name a country that has the most beautiful currency that you have seen?
Oh, man. Most beautiful currency. That's hard. I mean, I personally always am impressed by how crisp and clean the Australian currency is. Like, I don't think I've ever seen like a torn Australian bill.
Wow.
They use like a special. Someone told me this. I forgot who, but they use like my wife's Australian, so we like go to Australia a lot. So they have like a special material that they use in the bill to prevent it from like getting torn, and as a result, it doesn't look like plastic, but it's like just very smooth and crisp.
Makes sense.
never know.
Why would we let our money be ripped? That seems like a stupid idea. I think America should probably adopt that, but all right. I digress. Go ahead, Parker. Next question.
So you talk about Australia, and now you're in Mexico City. Are you a beach guy or a mountain retreat type guy?
Oh man, I love mountains. Yeah, I love mountains and lakes. So more of a mountain lake guy than a beach guy for sure.
It's hard. I go back and forth. It really depends. Like, there's something about mountains that are incredible. You feel like very isolated in some way, but isolation brings kind of beauty to the world, and just feelings of a lot of mindfulness, at least for me. But then there's a beach, and the beach has the water and the waves and the people walking and going and putting your feet in the warm sand. That's also really good too. So, okay.
Have you?
Sounds
been
like
to
Parker
Patagonia?
needs a vacation.
I feel like it'll change your mind.
No, but that sounds like an incredible place to go next.
Yeah, it might convince you like mountains are the way to go. Mountains.
Okay.
Add it to the list,
All right.
Parker. I'm trying to convince Parker to stop traveling as much with his amazing wife, a.k.a. Mrs. Elevation Nation, and travel more with me, but it's not working that well. But I'm going to keep on trying.
We were in South America this year together.
That's true. I don't take that for granted. Dexter, we mentioned a few different books around money and finance. Parker obviously loves to read with his beautiful bookshelf behind him. Do you have a book recommendation for Elevation Nation?
Well, you mentioned it already, but I personally loved Psychology of Money. I think Morgan Housel just has done such an amazing job with communicating kind of all about the relationship to money and how people's relationship to money really determines like whether they're happy about their money or whether they're sad about their money. And it's not necessarily about how much you have, but it's more about you dealing with the emotions that you have around money. So that would be still my recommendation for Elevation Nation.
I actually don't think I have that one, Sam. I really don't.
Add it to the list, Parks. We'll have
Dexter,
to get
it's
it for
coming
you.
to the point. I usually buy like 90% of the books that people recommend that I don't have. And this bookshelf had, it's 5 layers. Talk about layers, right? Like, I started with not many, and now we have a library. And I've read a good
That's
amount.
incredible.
Yeah, I've read a good amount of them, but there are some in there that I'm like, oh my God, some of these books are so dense. And I'm like, that is so much time and effort. I'm also someone who reads multiple books at one time because my brain, I just like want to think about, I have a book about money. I also have a book about building a restaurant. I have a book about this guy who traveled the world. Like, I want to be in different areas and take different ideas at different times. And I don't want to be just set on one story, one thing. I don't know if you guys feel that way. Okay, fair enough. All right, Dexter, we got the last question. We know you're prepped for it, but it's an important one because every single person within Elevation Nation is united by what we call a mental motto. A mental motto is a phrase, a quote, a slogan that you live your life by. I have one. Sam has one. 180 plus other elevators have a mental motto. So we're curious, what's your mental motto?
My mental motto is to work to live and not live to work. That's something that I've recently just really bought into as the vision for my next few years in my season of life.
An absolutely beautiful mental motto, one that I think resonates with Parker and myself. And Dexter, on behalf of Elevation Nation, and more importantly, me and Parker, thank you for reaching out to us, wanting to share your story with Elevation Nation, man. Like I said at the beginning, when you asked what's the goal of this podcast, it's to build an amazing connection and relationship. And I can already tell you are a great guy to know and have in our corner. And I'm looking forward to introducing you to more people in the nation, welcoming you to Elevation Nation, and supporting you on your journey as you continue to enjoy life and peel back those layers. I'm just honored to welcome you to the nation. And thank you for joining us, brother.
Thanks so much for having me. I love chatting with you and Parker. I think Elevation Nation is an amazing platform that you guys have built from the ground up. So, yeah, I had a lot of fun chatting with you guys and look forward to hopefully more chats like this.
Looking forward to
Elevation Nation. Till next time. Peace.